Hi, welcome to today's video. This is one of our how-to Sunday morning sessions. This is the first one for the fall-winter 2024 season. And kicking off is our friend Jim, who was here before, talking to us about concerns involving scale sailing ship modeling. He said there's lots of stuff out there about, ships with guns and steam boilers and all that, but, regrettably, sailing ships are often neglected. So that's one of his passions, and he likes to share, as do we all. And today he's going to do specific talking about rigging, how to select it, how to use it, how to take care of it, and all the care and feeding you need to know about threads and rigging materials. So take it away, Jim.
Thank you, Bill. Basically, rigging, not necessarily just ship models. It can be aircraft, it can be cars, it can be miniatures, it can be dioramas. Whenever you're adding line to a kit, to a diorama, to a project, what do you do? What do you look for? How is the best things to handle these things? Okay, first things first. Personally, I avoid natural fibers when doing model rigging. Whether it's cotton, wool, or anything else like that, a natural fiber, because it's natural, will react to humidity. So unless you're willing to really seal it completely, it will react to more or less humidity. It'll sag, it'll tighten, they'll change over time depending on the temperature and the humidity. I try and stay to artificials like polyethylene or polyester. Polyester thread I have used for my model ships basically for 50 years. I've never had a problem with it changing over time. It stays. Once it's anchored, it stays. They also tend to last longer simply because the natural rigging thread will react in some ways that will break. Cotton threads, for instance, I've refurbished 4 different ship models now for other people that were rigged with cotton thread. After 30 years, the cotton thread, as soon as you touched it, basically disintegrated. It just came apart into dust. So I personally recommend stay with artificials if possible. Polyester being one of the best, or polyester mixed threads. Okay, when you're working with rigging, whether it's for a car, plane, or anything else, you want something to scale. The other problem is almost every kit that's made will offer you some rigging if it's required, like a sailing ship model will offer you rigging, whether it's Revell, Heller, any other metal kit. They'll send you threads, usually on some kind of little spool, and it'll be enough to finish the model. But it's extremely rare to get more than 2. You'll have a black, for instance, for anything that's tarred rigging that's supposed to be staying, and a lighter color for what's called running rigging used in pulleys. But there's just 2, and there's only 2 sizes. If you're doing that type of work, and like me, you realize there's an awful lot of difference visually between an 8-inch hawse rope for the anchor and a 1/2-inch pulling rope for a pulley. You want different sizes of thread. You want different sizes of rope on your model, whether it's a ship or a car or a plane. So, best place to look. Personally, dollar stores. Always worth it because they will have threads in packages of multicolor, usually synthetic, and a lot of different sizes. For $2, you'll get, 9 little spools of thread of different colors. Excellent. The other important one is knitting and craft stores. These all come from knitting supply stores. And they're very cheap. You get enormous amounts. You can, a $2 or $3 investment, you've got everything you need for years. And they come in all kinds of different colors, all kinds of different thicknesses. I measure my thickness the simplest way possible by, for instance, we can show on this camera, against a dark background, you put your thread down and glue a piece. Okay? Glue, tape, whatever. And then you take the next one and put it down next to it. Now you'll see on a dark background, you can tell right away, this is wider than this. This is how you measure, for instance, for a ship model. Get an idea of what size it is in actual width. It's hard. Sometimes you'll need a micrometer maybe, which is fairly easy to find now. But even by eye, you can tell that's a little thinner, that's a little thicker, that's still thicker. That lets you judge when you're looking at your ship model. You put it again, that's too thin, I should have a little bit bigger. That's too big, I should have a little bit smaller. Colors, that's up to you. For instance, a lot of car antennas, a lot of aircraft antennas and rigging. Most of them after World War I were metal of some kind, usually painted black to be seen, and they were usually held by a metal grommet of some kind. So a black thread, when you're rigging a biplane, for instance, is a pretty safe bet. Or a gray, a very dark gray will look very good because a lot of the rigging lines were metal cable. Now, when you're looking at all of these things, you will find a lot of threads, as in this one, for instance, which is a polyester cotton mix. I'm hoping you can see that clearly. Okay. This is a good, strong thread. It's white. It's easily dyed or painted if you want to change colors, but it has a small flaw. The fibers will come apart. They will unravel. Okay. A lot of the synthetic threads will not, but some of the real threads or the mixed threads will unravel. They'll start to look hairy, particularly on your model kit. After, let's say, 6 months, you're looking at it, and the ropes are starting to develop hairs sticking out all over the place. I've seen several videos on YouTube of people building beautiful ship models that complained about this after the fact. The way to solve this, anytime you're rigging a model kit, if you're not sure that the thread is fully synthetic and will stay, simple, beeswax. This is available in a craft store. It's available in the fishing supply store. A lot of threads. Cabela's, for instance, will carry a large selection of stuff for fly fishing. A lot of threads, wax, and other supplies are available there. Beeswax works extremely well. Very simple. You hold it, put the thread there, run the thread through the slot, and as you pull, the thread gets waxed. Okay? Now, that by itself will help. But even better, you take a candle, once the thread is waxed, hold it well above, you don't want to burn anything, but well above, and just slowly run it through the heat. The wax will melt into the thread, and that will remain completely weatherproof for years. One of the simplest ways to treat any kind of model rigging thread is to wax it. A lot of people who do macrame or knitting will also do this because they want their products not to come apart later. But waxing is simple, and you just hold it just over the flame far enough so that a heat melts the wax. You'll see the wax melt in and the color change. And that will keep your thread for a long, long time. Another simple way of doing things. Black thread is used on model ships to represent the rigging ropes that are called standing rigging. That is the rigging that doesn't normally change. They are black because they're usually tarred. Standing rigging is covered in tar because it preserves the rigging, preserves the coils and the various materials that the ropes are made of. And the tar keeps a preservative on that so that the wind and water will not eat into it. But they always look black. Okay. A lot of kits, whether it's Heller, ICM, a lot of kits that make sailing ships today, use a loom. This is used to make those black lines on either side of the mast that hold the mast up. And the instructions in the kit will tell you how to do it. You know, usually put the masthead up there. They're telling you which slots to put your thread in as you wrap it around. And then you're supposed to tie it or glue it. What I've done most often, and it works extremely well, once this is assembled, you're doing your ship model kit, you've got your black line rigging done properly, it looks good, everything's when you want to preserve it, to put it on the boat. Simple, simple, simple. White Elmer's glue. Put it in the bottle, mix it half and half with water, and then just coat everything. Take a big fat brush, coat the entire assembly with that diluted white glue, school glue. Let it dry. I made HMS Victory. She's about that long, about that high. The masting was all done with this process. That was 46 years ago. Hasn't moved. They're still solid today. I have to redo the parts that I didn't do that way. Things like the yard arms on the Victory. They do need refurbishing because I didn't do the various rigging lines with the Elmer's glue. So after 40 years, they're starting to unravel. So I'm redoing those. This, by the way, this is my rigging box. 50 years of collected threads and tools and bits. Okay. Tools. A small, keep in mind, anything you're rigging, whether it's a biplane or a ship or even a spaceship, whatever, anything you're rigging, you're going to have to work in small spaces. A very small box cutter is available in most hobby stores, if not dollar stores, hobby craft stores. Very small, tiny little blade on a push button. Any small blade that you can handle safely. You're going to need it to get into corners because you can't get to that spot. These are excellent for just trimming off that one place where you've just glued it. Click. Always, of course, good scissors. Always good tweezers, because you need the tweezers to pull the thread through once you've got it through a particular opening. I use tape and extra hands. Very, very good for if you're rigging your line, you run it through the model, you put it in the extra hand to hold it at that end, and then you run it around where you need it and glue it. Because a lot of times you're sitting there, you're holding it at this end, you run it around, okay, I gotta hold it while I'm gluing it. Always use something, a piece of tape works fine. You can tape it to the table, you tape it to a workbench, move your thread around to where you want it, and then a touch of glue. Rigging lines. The simplest way to do a rigging line, no matter what you're doing, whether it's an aircraft or a plane or whatever. You have your sprue, your plastic, your wood, whatever you're using, and you run your line to where you want it to go. Okay? It can go to a corner or whatever. It's supposed to go in that spot. My suggestion, once you've got that in a spot, could be hard to see here, but once you've got it where you want it, what I do is I take cyanolacrylate, or otherwise known as crazy glue. I have it on a stand right near me. There's a little drop in there. I'll use a toothpick, touch it lightly to there, and just touch it where the line crosses the plastic. Hold it for a few seconds, then continue. But that is not really a secure spot. You need to go around it again, okay? You've glued it in there. Now, once that's glued, run it around. Bring your thread around to the same spot and glue it again. Gluing thread to one particular spot. The thread is strong. The plastic may be strong enough. The cyanolacrylate glue may not. There is no strength to cyanolacrylate. Its strength is strictly because it's bonding two surfaces. So if you just drop a glue, put the thread, and then go somewhere else, it has no anchor point. Always try, whatever you're rigging, always try and anchor that thread. twist it around, and then give it another spot of glue. It's got something to hold on to. It'll make things a lot easier and a lot less swearing when you have to repair stuff later. Okay, we're just about done. Another very good tool, simple clamps. Wonderful when you're tying thread, when you're putting stuff together on an airplane or whatever, and you're holding it there because you're not sure if the glue's set, or you're holding it there while you have to rig it somewhere else. The other end has to be tied. Little clamp. Very simple, very cheap. You get it anywhere, dollar stores. A simple little clamp to hold the knot. Then you move around. Another thing I find very useful, again, fly tying supplies in various sporting goods stores. This is a spindle. It holds your thread and it feeds the thread up through a tube. There we go. Feeds the thread up through a tube, and that lets you dispense it a lot easier. You know where the thread is at all times. You can wrap it around without having to hold it with your fingertips. Very, very handy for anything you're doing for rigging. One last point. Okay, rigging of any kind, not just thread. Sometimes you need netting. Sometimes you need turnbuckles. So anytime you're rigging, let's say, a 72nd scale biplane, which is tiny, and you want the turnbuckles to show the places where the cables on the real plane are attached, tie your thread close as you can, and a simple toothpick with a little drop of silver or, let's say, gunmetal, tiny drop of metallic paint. Just use the toothpick, put a drop right at the joint. At that scale, that's enough to show you, that's enough to display what a turnbuckle is, or a linkage is for the cables. Anything bigger, that can also be managed. But a lot of rigging also requires netting, particularly ships. There's a lot of netting on a ship, particularly sailing ships. There's a lot of netting to prevent people falling out, to prevent hammocks from rolling all over the floor, to put covers up to prevent people getting shot because they're hidden. Okay, there are several different kinds of what is called tulle, T-U-L-L-E. This is available in most fabric and craft stores. It's used as veil material for bridal dresses. This is what they make the veils out when they put all the decorations and embroidery on it. Very cheap. It's a very fine plastic mesh, which is easy to work with. It is stretchable. It can be painted. It also comes in various colors, but basically black and white's easy. Easy to paint with any kind of modeling paint. And it comes in various types, various sizes of mesh, meaning the actual openings can be a little bigger, a little smaller. Easy to use. Cheap, easy, easy to paint. Very much recommended if you have any kind of net to show on a ship model or a diorama or everything else. Lozenge patterns on windows on a diorama, old buildings that had what they call carotid. This is excellent. Paint it black, cover it over the plastic, there you go, instant painting, depending on whichever scale you want to use. That's about it. The main point is, anything you use, make sure it will stay. If it's a natural fiber, it may unravel over time and you may lose it. Good modeling to everybody. I hope this helped.
Oh, excellent, Jim. Thank you very much for sharing with us. One thing came to mind when you were speaking. You were talking about the process of beeswaxing line, which I found very fascinating. Mm-hmm. If I remember my literature properly, one of the properties of doing that is after some time, if you find your rigging is sagging, you can reapply a heat source close but not directly to it, and it will cause it to become taut again.
It does work, particularly for the polyester threads. If the wax is reheated, as it cools, it tightens. So a gentle heat applied underneath melts the wax again, and then sit back and wait. It's not enough to correct a big bow type thing, but when your rigging line is just sagging a little bit visibly, yes, that'll work.
So that's a good overview of materials, tools, considerations for rigging. In a future episode, I'm going to con somebody into talking about knots.
Oh,
Very good knot finder myself. Was never started a gun, so I'm going to have to coerce somebody who was.
oh.
Anyways, thank you for joining us. We'll see you again in the next video. Bye now.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, don't forget, please subscribe, slap that bell, hit that like button, and join Team Hobby Center.